On Earth, there have been 4 kinds of terrifying human experiments, especially the last one, which even directly reflected humanity's future. First, the Kellogg experiment. In 1939, American psychologist Kellogg placed his 10-month-old son Donald together with a 7-month-old chimpanzee named Gua and raised them together, creating the same living environment and education style to observe whether the chimpanzee could be raised as a human. As the experiment went on, Kellogg was surprised to discover that Gua's behavioral abilities developed much faster than Donald's. For example, learning earlier to turn doorknobs to open doors or to drink water from a cup, and so on. But because little Donald spent every day with Gua, by nearly 2 years old, he had only learned 3 words, while children his age had already mastered at least 50 words. At the same time, Donald's behavior became more and more like a chimpanzee, not only often making chimpanzee calls, but even learning to walk on all 4s. These strange behaviors made Kellogg break out in cold sweat. He realized that not only had he failed to raise Gua as a human, but had instead raised his own son to be like a chimpanzee. And so, the experiment was forced to end in its 9th month, and Gua was sent back to the Primate Research Center. But by then, Gua already had human-like emotions and could no longer adapt to chimpanzee life. She was not only depressed, but also showed extreme suffering. So this chimpanzee, whose average lifespan was about 50 years, died at only 3 years old. In contrast, Donald, after leaving Gua, seemed not to be affected by this childhood experiment. He quickly caught up with children his age and even got into Harvard University. However, at the age of 42, Donald suddenly committed suicide due to depression. After this incident, some accused the Kellogg experiment of being completely unethical. He did not respect Donald, and it was also an act of cruelty to animals. Although this experiment proved that human behavior and intellectual development depend on complex social and cultural factors, and not merely on interaction with other species. But in any case, this experiment caused irreversible psychological harm to both Gua and Donald. Second, the Stanford Prison Experiment. In 1971, American psychology professor Philip Zimbardo, to study whether a specific environment would affect human nature, recruited 24 mentally healthy volunteers. Half played prisoners, wearing prison uniforms. The other half played guards, equipped with batons, to conduct a prison simulation experiment. And to make the scene more realistic, the prisoners were not allowed to move freely once locked up, while the volunteers playing guards were told they could use any non-violent punishment to maintain order. And so, the prisoners and guards quickly got into their roles. At first, the guards only carried out simple restrictions on prisoners. After noticing the researchers did not stop them, their actions became more and more extreme. They began to abuse or insult the prisoners at will. Until the 6th day, when some prisoners showed signs of breakdown, the 2-week experiment was finally terminated. Afterwards, Zimbardo concluded from this experiment that whenever people are given power over others, they will strongly tend to abuse it. Even looking at many atrocities in human history, they were not truly about good or evil in human nature, but simply giving some people the chance to do evil. In other words, under the influence of a specific environment, even angels could quickly fall into demons. And you can never truly know, in certain circumstances, whether the person beside you is a gentle gentleman or will turn into a bloodthirsty fiend. Third, the rhesus monkey experiment. In 1957, American psychologist Harry Harlow, in order to refute John Watson's cry immunity method, which claimed infants only develop attachment to food and not to the companionship of family affection, conducted an experiment called surrogate mother. He first gathered a group of newborn rhesus monkeys, kept them alone in cages, and placed 2 wire structures inside. One could continuously provide milk. The other was a cloth doll shaped like a monkey but could not provide anything. Harlow let the baby monkeys choose on their own. The result showed the babies only went to the wire one for milk when hungry, but spent almost all other time clinging to the doll. Especially when Harlow used objects to frighten them, they clung tightly to the doll that gave warmth and safety. Then Harlow upgraded the experiment by placing the baby monkeys in a larger area and found their first reaction was not to play happily, but to run straight to the doll to ease their tension. Even when there were living peers nearby, they still rushed to the doll without hesitation. If the doll was removed, the baby monkeys would curl up in fear, not daring to move around, and would let out desperate screams. Those monkeys raised in loneliness all developed severe autism, not only showing hostility toward peers, but also developing self-harming tendencies. After many experiments, Harlow announced his results, proving that love consists of 3 variables: touch, movement, and play. As long as these 3 are provided, a primate's needs can be fully met. Once subjected to severe and lasting isolation early in life, psychological damage will occur, and such effects last for life. According to statistics, this experiment caused the deaths of more than 5,000 monkeys. Although many believed this experiment was extremely cruel and unethical, it cannot be denied that Harlow, by himself, overturned the distorted child-rearing methods of the time, thereby saving countless children. Fourth, the Universe 25 experiment. In 1968, ethologist John Calhoun in his laboratory built a square city for mice, with many tunnels and rooms in the walls for mice to move and live in. Here, there were no predators at all, and with unlimited food resources, the only limitation was the living space, which could hold a maximum of 3,800 mice. After that, Calhoun placed 4 pairs of mice into the lab, and in just 55 days, their numbers doubled, then continued to double every 2 months. But because food was abundant, the atmosphere among the mice remained peaceful. When the population reached 620, growth began to slow significantly, and social structures started to form. The first generation of mice, with mates and families, controlled the core resources and prime locations. So the newly born female mice could only live alone in areas far from food, while the newly born males gathered in the city center, enjoying abundant food and social life. At the same time, the social behaviors of the mice became increasingly bizarre. For example, females would injure and abandon their young before weaning. Dominant males, unable to maintain territory, could no longer protect females. And low-status males began showing passive withdrawal, enduring attacks without fighting back. When the experiment reached day 600, with the birth of the last surviving individual, the population peaked at 2,200. From that moment, the social behavior of the mice entered permanent collapse. More and more mice began spending all their time and energy on eating, sleeping, and grooming themselves. Their fur became pure and spotless, without a single scar, like angels of the apocalypse. They no longer attacked each other, nor engaged in mating behavior. When most of the mice stopped reproducing, their behavioral patterns permanently changed, and the entire mouse society collapsed. When the last mouse died, in less than 5 years, this perfectly equipped mouse utopia ultimately perished. Afterward, Calhoun concluded from this experiment that when all usable space is occupied and all social roles are filled, the competition and pressure experienced by individuals will lead to the complete downfall of complex social behavior, ultimately leading to collapse. Because this experiment directly reflected human society. Once its results were published, they were immediately opposed by people from all walks of life. They believed that human social behavior is far more complex than that of mice, and so the experiment was gradually abandoned. But more than 40 years later today, many social phenomena we face can still be found reflected in this experiment and correspond to certain natural laws. That is, only when the younger generation is more energetic and mentally healthier can the development of human society be better sustained. Although the Universe 25 experiment cannot predict humanity's future, for humans it indeed holds a certain value of inspiration. Thanks for watching our video till the very end. If you find this video interesting, feel free to share it with your friends. Finally, don't forget to hit a like button and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video. Goodbye.